thank you for joining us. So I teach a lot of cooking classes, healthy cooking classes at different libraries around Massachusetts, and now I've moved to Portland, Maine, so I'm all around New England teaching classes. Usually it's all healthy recipe focused, different, like tonight we do the smoothies. Also, we're going to do the healthy sauces class next week, and then the week after that we're going to do healthy desserts. So I am vegan. Let's see, my apron here, healthy vegan. I've been vegan for about 25 years, so I don't have any animal products, no meat or dairy or anything like that. I have two boys who are 17 and 20, about to turn a year older, amazingly. And they have always been vegan as well. So, it's been one thing for me to try to, make healthy recipes for myself. But, when it comes to trying to get my kids to eat healthy recipes, and then, if I can get them to have dinner and then have something with kale in it and ask for seconds, then that's a big win for me. So I've been teaching these classes. So normally I'll come to a library and bring my kitchen to everybody, all the equipment that I need. But, in this time right now where, so many of us are home. So you are coming to my kitchen. I see people doing these live cooking demos and, big fancy kitchens, really nice cameras and everything. And at first I was a little reluctant because I said, well, this is my kitchen. It's really not very big. And I definitely don't have the fancy camera or anything, but, here we are anyway. So, so I have, I've written last year the Healthy Vegan Cookbook. So when I've been teaching these classes, and I get a lot of requests of people asking me to, come up with a book or, something more than just the 4 recipes that I usually do. So I wrote the book last year. It's available on Amazon, the Healthy Vegan Cookbook, Colin McCullough, you'll be able to find it there. So really the 2 main focuses of the cookbook are smoothies, which we're going to do tonight, and then the sauce recipes we'll do next week. In terms of the smoothies, that's generally what I like to have for breakfast is fruit. But, I don't really want to take the time to sit there and peel everything and, sit down with a bowl of fruit. Fruit is really great. It's really easy energy for your body. But, it doesn't last long in your system. You can digest it real fast. So what I like to do is to have something that I can have over the course of the morning. So fruit, and then also, use some nuts and some seeds and things like that. All sounds super healthy, maybe kind of boring. What I like to do is to write recipes that are trying to mimic the taste of desserts. So I kind of have a sweet tooth. I like to start my morning with something that tastes like dessert. So in the cookbook, I have 30 different smoothie recipes. I like to be able to have something different every day, so I don't get bored having the same thing. We're going to do 4 recipes tonight. I'll introduce the main star of the program here. I have a Vitamix, which is a really powerful blender. You don't need a Vitamix in order to do these. If you have like a Vitamix is a really high power blender. It's pretty expensive if you buy it. I believe they start at $350 in the store on up, but you can get them used on Craigslist, on eBay for a lot cheaper. If you don't want to do that, then you could use a Ninja, like a mid-level blender like a Ninja or a NutriBullet or something like that. If you have something like that, you can make these recipes in a regular blender, but regular blender is really not built to be able to do all the nuts and seeds and everything easily. So it'll work. It's just the consistency is not going to be quite as smooth as having a high power blender. I'm not paid by Vitamix. I wish I was, because I, shill for them all the time in classes that I teach. But, I always say, if you can, if you're wanting to invest some money into being able to eat healthier, then, getting a really high power blender like a Vitamix or a Blendtec or something like that is a really great investment. These last a really, really long time, like 20 years at least, or they should. So, I use mine for smoothies and sauces and soups and salad dressings and all kinds of things. So this is one appliance that I use more than anything else. So I just want to start with that. So why don't we jump into the first recipe? Does anybody have any questions or comments before we dive in?
Nope. I've let people know on both streams that I am watching the chat stream. So if people do have questions, please do chime in. But we don't have any questions yet, Colin. Thanks for asking.
Okay. And Clayton, is there some way, if I send you the recipes afterwards, that you'd be able to post the recipes for these four?
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as you send them to me, I can do a blog post, which will be on our website, and we can put it on social media so we can share the recipes with everybody. So. Okay.
All right. I just want to make sure that people don't have to write all this down.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a good point. We will definitely share the recipes with everybody. We do have somebody who just chimed in, said they've had a Vitamix for 23 years and are a proud Vitamix user. That's awesome. I also I guess I can personally share, I just used a Vitamix tonight for making a sauce for the dinner I made. So I can chime in. None of us are getting paid by Vitamix, but they are quite a tool to have. I had a gift, I think, as an Amazon gift card from somebody that I turned into a Vitamix once upon a time. So.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, if Vitamix is listening, then, pay me off, please. I'm happy to get paid. So we're going to start with the first recipe, sweet potato pie smoothie. So for all of these recipes, basically what I did was to, look up recipes for these desserts, whether they're pies or, cakes or something like that, and look at what are the essential ingredients? What are the things that make it taste like what it is? And so often the case, it's, a mixture of different spices and things that we use, different flavorings. So one thing I want to point out when we start here is I don't use any kind of almond milk or plant-based milk. I don't use that to start with. I make it in the Vitamix because the Vitamix can do it. So basically, I'm adding the nuts and the water first. If you're allergic to nuts, you can use oats is fine as well. It's less fat than with the nuts, but whatever it is you want to do. So in all of these recipes, we put the water and the nuts in first, blend that for a minute, and then we add everything else. So for this recipe, we're going to use 1/3 of a cup of pecans here. Oop, lost one already. I'm going to put in 2 cups of water here. When I do these classes live, then I always I have to measure everything out, and then people have to listen to my terrible jokes while I'm busy doing all that. So in this case, I've pre-measured pretty much everything, so I can just put it right in. So I'm going to run the blender just for a minute, just to break down the nuts first before I add everything else. The blender is a little bit loud, so if you want to mute it for the time that it's running, or play music, Clayton, or something like that. But I'll go ahead and start it.
I'll let people control their own volume, but be warned, it may get loud here. Sometimes Zoom is pretty good about filtering these out, so we'll see how it goes. That's actually pretty incredible. I'm not hearing a thing. Oh, there it is, faint.
There we go. So with the Vitamix, it's powerful enough that it can really blend it all together. Like I said, I prefer to make it, as it is instead of making it ahead of time. I used to make almond milk ahead of time and, keep it in a jar in the refrigerator. Anything that's made fresh like that, it's only going to last about, 4 days or so before it starts to go bad. So, it's really inconvenient that way. Plus I have to, make the stuff ahead of time, which I'm really lazy. I don't want to have to make the stuff ahead of time all the time. That's too much prep work. If you make healthy eating inconvenient, then it's going to be really hard to stick with that. So the other thing is when you blend it in with the water and you don't take the pulp out, like when they make almond milk, they blend up the water and the almonds and then they strain out the pulp from that. But the pulp is where all of the nutrition is. So you'd be losing that if you strain it out. And the other thing is the pulp really helps to keep you full all morning. So, like I said, the fruit takes your body about a half an hour to be able to digest that. So that's pretty quick. But the pulp with the nuts or with the oats, that really helps to keep you full all morning. So I really like to leave that in there.
Colin, somebody had a question. Just going to interrupt you real quick. Somebody had a question about just timing, and as they're preparing and thinking about making these smoothies, is this something that you always do fresh in the morning and you want to consume them within a certain amount of time, or do you ever make them in the night before so that you don't have to even think about it and they're just ready to pull out of the fridge?
You can definitely make it the night before. It's fine. One thing that I do sometimes is I will just make a double batch. If I have everything out already, then I'll just make a double batch of it, and then I'll drink half of it for breakfast, and then the other half I'll just put it in the freezer. So you can freeze it, or you can put it in the fridge. And like I said, like 4-day fresh rule, it's going to last about 4 days in the fridge, but it lasts a long time in the freezer. So usually I'll make this. This makes about a quart, so I'll put it in the mason jar and then just drink it slowly over the course of the morning. I definitely don't guzzle it. I don't, drink all of it at once. So over the course of the morning, gives you plenty of energy, keeps you full, and you are drinking something that tastes like sweet potato pie. So it's great. So this is about a cup of cooked sweet potato. So usually when I make sweet potato, I'll usually, boil several of them, cut them up into cubes like this, boil it, and then I'll put it in the freezer and then just pull it out as I'm using it. So, I like to use the freezer to make things more convenient. I'm definitely not going to get up in the morning and sit there and, cut up a sweet potato and, put it in the smoothie. So just put it in the freezer, and then you can pull it out for, anything else you're using, whether it's smoothies or, some kind of a bowl meal for dinner. You can put sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are like, one of the most nutritious veggies that you can get. So it's great health benefits to that. So put in the sweet potato there. Also, benefit of being home is I don't have to use gloves because it's just for me. All right, I'm going to do a frozen banana. So again, just for the sake of convenience, then I'll buy usually 2 bunches of bananas at a time. Wait until they ripen to where they're yellow with some brown spots. Peel them, break them in half, and then put them in a Ziploc bag, put them in the freezer. So you don't have to worry about, bananas going bad or getting the timing right. You have frozen bananas all the time in the freezer. You can use them for smoothies whenever you need to. You use frozen bananas in a smoothie really helps to make it creamy. So it really helps with the consistency, and it also doesn't have a very strong taste. If you use like half a banana or one here, then it just kind of sits in the background for taste. So put that in there. Next ingredient we're going to use is about 1 inch thumb of fresh ginger. So I chop that up. Again, Vitamix just blends it all up so you don't have to like peel it or grate it or anything like that. The next
there's a quick question about the sweet potatoes. Mm-hmm. Quick question about the sweet potatoes. Somebody asked if they could use, if you've ever used frozen sweet potatoes. So boil them, but then make them last longer. You could boil several and keep them in the freezer if that would work. I don't know if that changes the texture or makes it funky.
No. That's usually what I do. So yeah, that's a good frozen sweet potatoes. Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Next ingredient I'm going to use is medjool dates. So this is a natural form of sweetener. Medjool dates. So unlike using sugar or honey or maple syrup or agave or anything, it's really concentrated. This is a natural form of sweetener. The dates have fiber to them, so it doesn't affect your blood sugar the way that regular sugar would. It's a much slower, more gentle hit to your body. So I like to use the Medjool dates. So these are totally optional. I know some people that don't like it so sweet, so they don't use these. Sometimes I want something a little extra sweeter, so I'll use a few more. So these you can usually find in supermarkets. I usually get mine at Trader Joe's. They have them. Whole Foods has them. You can order them online easily. You just want to make sure that they don't have the pits in them before you put them in the blender. Vitamix is really powerful, but it's just going to turn your pits into baby pits, so that will not be good. So Medjool dates. Just also, there's really two kind of dates that you'll normally find in a supermarket. There's the Medjool dates that are larger and chewy, and then there's the Deglet Noir dates, which are smaller and usually not so chewy. So I prefer the Medjool dates just because they're softer and it's easier for the blender to be able to use them. So there's the dates. I'm going to do a tablespoon of flax seeds. So these are unhulled or unground flax seeds, so they're whole. This is where if you don't have a powerful blender, you probably want to get the flax seeds already milled, or if you have like a little coffee grinder kind of thing, you can mill it yourself. But a regular blender is going to have a hard time with the seeds, and you're still going to have that texture. And seeds are really like powerhouses. So I like to use a tablespoon of seeds in pretty much any smoothie that I make. It's a great little boost in nutrition, and they just kind of blend right in, and you don't taste them, or it doesn't affect the texture. So there's the flax seeds. I put in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So liquid vanilla is kind of a common ingredient in the different smoothies that I make. If it's supposed to taste like a pie or cookie or something like that, then the vanilla really adds that taste to it. So there's a teaspoon of vanilla. I put in a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. This one, you can, just for the sake of easiness, I just buy the pumpkin pie spice blend already, the bottle of it. I use it in a number of different recipes, so you don't have to sit there and measure out the cloves and the ginger and the cinnamon and all that. So just for the sake of convenience, pumpkin pie spice. So that, it's about a teaspoon. And then, try to get all of it here. And then the last thing is going to be, I do add a little bit of salt. It's about 1/4 teaspoon sea salt. So the salt, like, you're not going to taste it. It just kind of boosts and amplifies the existing tastes that are there already. And, in a dessert like that, there's going to be some salt in there. So again, totally optional, but I like that. All right, so I'm going to blend this up for a minute or two.
I am really amazed at what a fine job Zoom is doing of drowning out the noise of the Vitamix. I know when I'm using a Vitamix in the morning, I've had times when my kids come in and they cover their ears because it's so loud. So the fact that we're not hearing this blender right now is, it's a blessing, I guess. Zoom is doing their job well. So they can be loud. These are the same I've seen in like Jamba Juice before, where they have in other places where they have a big shield that goes over them so that they're not making a ton of noise in the restaurant or in the so. Colin, just so that you know, you should probably be aware too, I think we may need to look and see if there's some ways we can improve this for future programs. Your video is being a little laggy. The audio has been smooth so far, but I'm getting a note that your network bandwidth is low. So just wanted to let you know, and I'll let you know. I'll check in and let you know if things degrade any further. So far, the audio has been fine, but I have noticed the video has been kind of choppy.
Okay. All right. So, well, I'm the only one here, so there's nobody else watching movies in the other room or anything. We'll have to figure that one out. So, like I said, makes about a quart. Um, some of the classes that I've done, people have asked me, you have to taste it. It's part of the whole thing. But, this is my recipe. I make it all the time. I know that it tastes good. So we'll like skip the whole, drink it. Oh, it's so good. Of course it's good. I wrote it. So I'll skip that. All right. So I just need to rinse out the Vitamix and then go on to the next one.
So, Colin, how do you know?
Yes,
a challenge that I have, I assume a lot of it's personal taste. Yep. So I'm not sure. I was just wondering, Colin, if you have any advice, like how thick? Like you can obviously make it as thick as you want it and add more, just add more liquid if you want. But do you have any thoughts about what's an ideal smoothie consistency, or for folks that don't make a lot and know what they like personally?
Yeah, it's really up to how much water you want to use. 2 cups of water plus everything else that I put in makes about a quart. And depending on how much other ingredients I'm using, it might make it thinner or thicker. Also some of the ingredients that I use, like the frozen banana or frozen mango sometimes. If it's frozen, then, obviously that's going to make it thicker as well. So if you don't want it to be as thick, then you can just not use the frozen. It's so much more convenient to me. And I like to have something cold, to take with me when I leave in the morning. So, again, if you wanted it thinner, then you just would add water to it. But, this is about how I like it. All right. So there's a sweet potato pie smoothie. And by the magic of having measured everything out, and I'll bring the next thing over here. Okay. This next recipe is the carrot cake smoothie. This is actually one of the first recipes that I made for breakfast smoothies that taste like dessert. Like I said, I've been vegan for a long time, for about 25 years. And, when I used to make smoothies years ago, then, I just put in the almond milk and put in, some fruit in that and just blend that up and drink it. And, after a while, that kind of got a little boring to me, like that kind of kitchen sink approach of just, throw in random stuff. And I said, well, what if I can make recipes that, really are supposed to be like dessert? And so I made this carrot cake recipe. And so this is one of the first ones that I did. And so, I make this for my kids, and they said, wow, like this is really good. Like, it tastes like you are having dessert for breakfast, which, for kids is great. For me with a sweet tooth, that's also great. So again, with carrot cake, I just went back to, traditional carrot cake recipes and, what is it that makes it taste like carrot cake? What is unique about it? And, what I found was it's really the spices. It's the cinnamon, the ginger, the nutmeg, the cloves, all of that. So, how can we recreate carrot cake in a healthy, whole food way so that you can have it for breakfast and it's really healthy for you, and you don't have to feel guilty or any of that. So why don't we'll start with that. I'm going to use 1/3 cup of raw almonds. So me personally, I like to use almonds in smoothies for the most part. I know in the last one we used pecans. Pecans have definitely have a flavor to them, which, in the sweet potato pie smoothie, I want that. But for the most part, I want the nuts to kind of be sitting in the background in terms of taste. So almonds, don't have a very strong taste themselves. They are kind of a hard nut to blend. So there's definitely pulp. If you didn't want to do that, you could use cashews as well. Instead of almonds, cashews are really soft and they don't really have much pulp to them. so they blend very easily. But the nuts, I like to use the almonds for the most part. So 1/3 of a cup of the almonds, and then 2 cups of the water. In the cookbook, it sort of seems like I'm a broken record because it's 1/3 of a cup of nuts and 2 cups of water for pretty much all of the smoothies, and then, you know, all of the other ingredients that go into it. So we'll blend this for a minute, again, just so that it can blend up the nuts first, and then add everything else, which is softer. So.
For folks watching on YouTube, people are chiming in about how much they're enjoying this and can't wait to be enjoying these smoothies and making them ourselves. So I just wanted to share that so that you heard that, Colin. And if anybody on YouTube would like to comment in the live chat, you're welcome to, and I'll share that with everybody. So.
Yeah, I guess thank you. You know, the downside of doing this online is that I don't get to pass out samples and have everybody try it, because that's one of my favorite parts of teaching the classes is, you know, people see what goes into making it, and then they get to taste it, and they say, you know, wow, like if I could have this for breakfast every day, then that'd be great. So we're going to put in.
There's a quick question, and I think it would be a great thing to talk about a little bit.
Sure.
And forgive me if you said this and I didn't hear it. But somebody asked if you could soak almonds overnight in the water to be softer, and I know that that's something that I've read in a lot of cookbooks with cashews. I'm sure it would work with almonds too. But what are your thoughts about soaking?
Yes, you can do that, and soaking is also really great if people have digestive issues with nuts. You know, not allergic to nuts, and that's not going to help. But you know, there's nuts have a phytic acid, just like beans, that some people kind of have a hard time with digestion. If you soak the nuts overnight, at least 8 hours, and then drain it off and rinse the next day, then it actually releases most of that phytic acid. So people find it's easier to digest. I don't have any trouble with that, so I don't soak it ahead of time. Again, it's like having to think of it the night before. You know, it's just so much more convenient to throw it in the blender, but you certainly can soak it. And if you have just a regular blender, then soaking overnight will make them easier to blend. But almonds are hard nuts, so even if you soak them overnight, it's still going to be more difficult for a regular blender than something like cashews, which are already pretty soft. Right. Next ingredient I'm going to put in is 1 apple. I have one of those apple slicers that you just, you know, push it over the apple and it cuts the core out, so makes it super easy. I don't really like to eat apples whole that much. I like to slice them and eat them that way. It's easier for me. But I'll just put them in the smoothie. So there we go. There's the apple. So we're going to put in one medium carrot, peeled or unpeeled. It's up to you. Again, you don't have to you know, shred it or anything like that. The blender does most of the work. So I'll dump that in. Let's see. So normally in this recipe in the book, I call for 1 frozen banana, but my sweetie, bananas don't really work for her very well, so I use frozen mango instead. So, you know, I was saying you can use frozen bananas to help make a smoothie creamier. And mangoes do the same thing. Mangoes are a little bit more sour, so you kind of taste that a little bit. Doesn't really sit in the background like bananas do, but I'll use that instead so that she can have this for breakfast tomorrow morning. All right. And then we're going to put in 2 of the medjool dates with the pits taken out. Yeah. Going to put in a tablespoon of flax seeds. So I'm using flax in here. Like I said, you don't really taste it. Just kind of blends in with everything else. You can use hemp seeds. You can use chia seeds. All of those are, really great nutritional powerhouses. So these ones are kind of interchangeable, but in this recipe, I've got the flax seeds.
Colin, there's a question. When you are substituting mango for banana, how much frozen mango do you use?
I would use about a cup frozen mango in replacing one banana.
Thanks.
I'm going to put in a teaspoon of vanilla extract here. There we go. And then this one has 4 different spices. I actually, there are times that I make this smoothie so much that I just kind of set those spices aside from all of the rest so that they're really easy to be able to access. Something like this, if you made the smoothie a lot, you could just, have a little mason jar and then make, a bunch of a whole bunch of the spice blend. So all you'd have to do is, put a teaspoon in and put it in your smoothie, make it ahead of time. So this is a combination of a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a quarter teaspoon of powdered ginger, an eighth of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Nutmeg is pretty strong, so I only use about an eighth of a teaspoon. And also, same goes for ground cloves. I use about an eighth of a teaspoon because cloves are kind of a strong, little bit goes a long way. So there's the spices. And I'll blend this for a minute.
And Colin, I don't know if you can hear me as you're blending it because you get a lot of noise even though we can hear it. But there is a question if you've ever used just the store pumpkin pie spice instead of your own spice mixture. Because I can imagine you have. Okay.
Normally I might run it for another minute or two just to get a really, really good blend, really consistent, but I don't want to make everybody wait either, so that's okay. So there's the carrot cake smoothie. There's that, and I'll rinse this out. And move on to the next assembly line style here. Out here. So, some people have told me that, having this as your breakfast, it's too much. Some people say, using a pint jar, a mason jar instead of a quart. If you want to drink a pint over the course of the morning and that keeps you full, then that's great. I work on the road a lot, so, I just kind of sip it as I go over the course of the morning. And, like I said, it gives me plenty of energy and keeps me full all morning. So, I don't really have, in the cookbook, I have all the different breakfast smoothies that taste like dessert recipes, but I don't really have recipes for things like, vegan pancakes or, the different kinds of breakfast foods like that. I don't really have cereal. To me, things like that, I might have it on a weekend or something, like some tofu scramble or something. But, anytime that I ever have cereal for breakfast or pancakes or something, that's so heavy. If you're used to eating fruit for breakfast in the form of a smoothie, then, something like, waffles or pancakes or something, it's really heavy. I really prefer not to have that. For the most part, I like the energy that I get from smoothies. The USDA recommendations for fruit and vegetables per day is 4 to 5 servings a day. And, in a lot of these smoothie recipes, then like carrot cake smoothie, this is actually over 3 servings of fruit, 3.5 servings of fruit. And that's just for breakfast, it's probably no surprise that most Americans don't even get, 1 or 2 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. So, with these recipes, you can get, almost the recommended daily amount in just in breakfast. So I'd like to do that. And I'll get the next recipe over here. This one is going to be orange creamsicle smoothie. So this is one of my favorite ones to do live in a class and hand that out so that people can try it because it's so good. It's really great. Let's see, this one be a shock to everyone, I'm sure. 1/3 of a cup of raw almonds. I do like to use raw almonds instead of roasted or salted or anything like that. It's just less processed that way. So this recipe, you can use 2 cups of water, or you can use 1 cup of water and 1 cup of yogurt. So I have vegan yogurt. Yogurt really gives it a really nice tanginess, so that, a regular orange creamsicle, you have that, it's kind of tangy. So I'm going to add that. So there's 1 cup of water, and then this is yogurt. So I have an Instant Pot, which is an electric pressure cooker. And one of the great benefits of the model of Instant Pot that I have anyway is it does allow you to make yogurt. It's really easy to do that. Vegan yogurt. I use soy milk. I use acidophilus pills and put that in. It is kind of an overnight thing. It does take a while to make it, but if you buy regular vegan yogurt, then it's kind of expensive if you're going through a lot of it. So I like to make it myself with the Instant Pot. It's really easy to do. But usually when I make too much. It comes out to about 3 pints. So that's kind of more than I'm going to use in a day or two. So what I end up doing is freezing those. Again, using the freezer to do the work for you. I pour the yogurt into silicone ice cube trays, and I just freeze those. And then again, once it's frozen, just put it in a Ziploc bag, and then you can just use these. So this is yogurt in the form of cubes, but this is about 1 cup of the yogurt. Or if you just want to use regular vegan yogurt, then 1 cup of that, that's fine.
I didn't know we were going to get a little tip on how to make a yogurt. That's something I've always wanted to do. So it sounds really simple too. Is it easy to find acidophilus?
Oh yeah. Hopefully that might be more of a but if you've ever tried making yogurt before, without an Instant Pot, then it's really finicky. The bacteria, likes a very specific temperature, and if you make it too hot, it kills it. And not hot enough, then it doesn't, work right. So, making yogurt, whether it's dairy or vegan yogurt, in my case, it's really kind of picky and difficult to do. But with an Instant Pot, it has the yogurt feature, and it puts it right at that specific temperature and keeps it that overnight. And then the acidophilus powder in the soy milk does its thing, and it's super easy to make. So the recipe on how to do that is also in the cookbook, but it's really super easy.
There's a question. Not everybody who's watching is vegan, and these recipes work great for you, whatever your choice is for ingredients. Do you know if the recipe would be altered incredibly if somebody used a dairy yogurt instead of a non-dairy yogurt? I don't know if you know, because
the taste probably wouldn't be that much different. I mean, the vegan yogurt is just kind of giving it a tang, just like a dairy yogurt would. So I wouldn't imagine that it would really be that much different. as far as making it though, in the Instant Pot, then I don't know how you with dairy, so I can't speak to that. I haven't done it before.
Sure.
All right. So we're going to put in 1 large orange. So I juiced this. It has all the pulp in it and everything, so it's nice and thick. Put that in. So again, normally I would use 1 frozen banana, but I'm going to put in some frozen mango chunks. Fresh mango, of course, would taste even better, but you know, mango, it's really messy, and you know, it tastes great, but it's really not super convenient for me to cut up a mango in the morning and like get the peel off and everything. So frozen mango is so much more convenient for me. So there's the mango. I'm going to put in half of a carrot, just roughly chopped. Going to put in 3 Bejeweled dates, make this really extra sweet. Especially if you put in the yogurt, then that's going to make it a little sour. So a little extra sweetness helps to kind of cut the edge of the sourness a little bit. I'm going to put in a tablespoon of hemp seeds here. So again, Trader Joe's has these. A lot of supermarkets now are having these. Hemp seeds are, there's a lot of nutritional benefits to it. Doesn't really have a strong taste if you only put in a tablespoon at a time. So put the hemp seeds in, but you could use, like I said, the chia seeds or the flax seeds as well. It's fine. So,
do you have any preference when you're picking out frozen fruit? Do you have any recommendations for brands that are especially flavorful?
Well, frozen fruit is usually just across brands. Sometimes I use store brands. Sometimes I'll get the Cascade Farms, which is the organic one. So I don't worry so much about the flavor. It seems pretty much the same across the board to me anyway. The thing is, I really do try to get organic fruit as much as possible. So you know, I'm not super strict about organic. I know some people like will not eat anything that's not organic. I'm not that strict. You know, I don't go to one supermarket all the time. I don't go to Whole Foods all the time. It's just I'm on the road. It's whatever supermarket is closest to me when I'm on my way home. So sometimes they have organic, sometimes they don't. All right, so 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract here. And also, you can use vanilla powder instead of vanilla extract. You know, a lot of times the extract has bourbon or, you know, some kind of alcohol that distills the vanilla seeds. If you really don't want to do that, then you can use vanilla powder instead, which is just the ground vanilla beans. It is pretty expensive. Just a little bottle, you know, definitely costs a lot of money. That you can order that online. And also, if you're using the powder, then you don't have to use as much of it as if you're using the liquid. So that does last longer. All right. So I'm going to put in an eighth of a teaspoon of turmeric. So if any of you follow health doctors, you know, turmeric is one thing that all the doctors say, use it as much as you can because of the health benefits. So this also gives it a little bit more of a yellow color. Last ingredient I'm going to put in this one is going to be, I like to use some orange zest. So 1/4 of a teaspoon of orange zest, or if you have some orange extract, the liquid, you can put in a couple of drops of that just to really kind of punch up the orange flavor of that. So put that in there and blend this up.
Alan, I wonder, I have noticed, I've seen more and more in some of the stores that I go to, fresh turmeric. And I don't know, for the longest time, I only saw turmeric powder, but it seems to be more and more easy to get fresh turmeric. And I wonder if you've ever used that.
One of the ways that I can tell when it's done for blending is, you know, like the seeds and the nuts and everything kind of make little ticking sounds. So when I don't hear that anymore, then that's usually how I know that after a minute or two that it's done blending. So I'm just going to run this for another minute here.
I wonder if, Colin, you could say when I use a Vitamix, they have different settings. This is specific to Vitamix use, but do you just go straight to your high setting? Do you start in low and ramp up? Do you have any techniques for getting the most out of your Vitamix?
I always start low and then ramp up. Vitamix also has the super high feature on it that goes extra high. I usually don't use that in blending most things. It usually doesn't need it, but just start low and then go up to high and run it for a few minutes. If you start it on high, then it has a tendency to like kind of go up in the pitcher and the container. And certainly if you don't have the cover on really tight, then it's just going to go all over the ceiling. I've only been here for a couple of months in this apartment, and so far, fortunately, my ceiling above where I use the Vitamix is untouched, but I'm sure that's not going to last for much longer. So your question about the turmeric root, yeah, you can use the turmeric root. Something like this, like I said, kind of a little bit goes a long way. So turmeric definitely has a taste, like an earthy kind of taste to it. So if you use more than a small quantity, then you are likely to be able to taste that in the smoothie. With the turmeric powder, I think you have a little bit more control over that. So I prefer to use just a little bit of the powder, but you can use the turmeric root. The other thing with turmeric is, just like ginger or something like that, it does freeze really well. So if you wanted to, buy the little pieces of turmeric and then just put them in the freezer and take it out and use it whenever you want, then that's another way to do it too. So that is the orange creamsicle smoothie. And I'm so sorry that everybody can't actually try this right now, because like I said, this is one of those recipes that people see it, and then once you actually get to try it in the classes, then this is always a class favorite. So there's that. So last recipe we're going to do for tonight is, save the best for last. This is the Black Forest smoothie, so chocolate and cherry. This recipe, I actually submitted it to a contest for Veg News magazine, which if you're not vegetarian or vegan, may not have heard of that, but in the vegan world, it's a really big deal. It's a big magazine. And so I submitted this to a contest last year for best vegan smoothie in the world. And I'm really happy to say that it came in the top 10 out of hundreds of submissions. Unfortunately, I didn't win, but I was really happy to be able to get in the top 10. That was really great. So Black Forest smoothie. Let's see, we're going to do third of, so this time I'm going to switch it up. In this recipe, instead of just using regular almonds, a third of a cup, and I'm going to use about a quarter of a cup, maybe a little bit less of almonds. And also mixed in here, there's also some rolled oats as well. So a mixture of oats and nuts. The nuts definitely have more fat and calories in them than the oats do. So, if you are trying to keep the calories a little bit less, then you can use oats as well. So put that in. And then I'm going to put in 2 cups of water for that. And blend those up for a minute. The other thing I should say about, I said that I used to make almond milk separately and then add it to things. like I said, it doesn't really last very long. You know, it's lasts about 4 days and then it starts going bad. And you know, the other thing was if you strain out the pulp, then you end up with all of this almond pulp. And you know, when I first started and I was making the almond milk a lot, then you know, I was just constantly throwing out this almond pulp, and you know, I kind of hate to throw things out and not be able to use it, you know, in some way. So I did find some recipes for like crackers, you can use it, and some cookies and things like that. But you know, I just don't make a lot of crackers like that. So you know, it was partly from sheer laziness that I didn't want to have to make almond milk all the time. You know, have to do all that extra work, but also I, you know, didn't want to have to throw it out. And like I said, that's where all the nutrition is. So I want to be able to eat that and not have to throw it out. Next thing we're going to put in is half of a frozen banana. So got that here. And I'm going to do about 1.5 cups of frozen cherries. So just sort of like the mango, you know, fresh cherries would taste better. Yes, definitely. But, you know, in the morning, am I going to take the time to, you know, sit there and stem fresh cherries and then have to take the pits out and everything? That's way too much work. You buy the frozen cherries, you can just grab it right out of the freezer anytime you want and make this recipe. So, you know, for something like this, definitely frozen cherries is what I want to use. So got there. And as far as, you know, different fruits go, stone fruits are really extra nutritious, that really deep red color. It's really full of nutrients. So, you know, I like to have, in this recipe, you could do cherries, you could do blueberries, you could do raspberries, you know, anything like that tastes fantastic in this smoothie. Next thing we're going to do is 4 medjool dates. I only used half of a banana here so that you really don't taste the banana at all. So I'm going to put in 4 medjool dates to make sure that this is nice and sweet here. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of cacao powder. So you can use cocoa powder. Cacao powder is just sort of the raw form of raw and unprocessed form of cocoa powder. So again, you know, trying to use things less processed, that's what I prefer to do, but definitely cocoa powder will work. So that's something like Trader Joe's has it now. You know, this might be more of like a Whole Foods kind of thing. You know, I usually go to Whole Foods, you know, maybe once every month or two, and then just kind of buy those specialty ingredients that that I can only find there, that it's easiest and most convenient for me to find there, and just go to a regular supermarket for everything else. But you know, everybody, if you want to go to Whole Foods all the time, then that's great. This is the cacao powder. So this really is what gives it a chocolate flavor to the smoothie. So, you know, when you see in a magazine or you hear somebody say online, you know, chocolate is actually healthy, it's actually good for you. It's not totally wishful thinking. You know, chocolate actually does have a lot of antioxidants and health properties to it, but it's the cacao powder that is the thing that has all of the nutrients and everything in it. So when you take the cacao powder and you add fat to it and you add the milk to it, then you turn it into chocolate. And then maybe not quite so healthy, but you know, if you use the cacao powder and you put it in the smoothie, then it gives it the same kind of chocolatey taste as if you used actual chocolate. And so you get all the health benefits without it being unhealthy. So I'm going to put in a tablespoon of chia seeds. That's here. So again, flax seeds, hemp seeds, it's fine, but I'll use the chia in here. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of vanilla. So I ran out of little little things to measure it with. This one I make probably like once a week at least. So I just eyeball it because I know how much you put in. This one, I like to use almond extract. So almond extract is used a lot in desserts to give things, kind of an extra cherry flavor to it. So, and this I use about a half a teaspoon. You don't need to, the cherries by themselves will have a pretty strong taste, but like I said, this really kind of punches that cherry flavor up even more. So I like that. And then I put in about a quarter of a teaspoon of espresso powder. So again, this one's totally optional. You don't have to put it in, but espresso powder is sort of like the baker's secret for chocolate. So it's just ground espresso beans. You only use about a quarter of a teaspoon, so just a little tiny bit. It's the baker's secret because it's basically just a little additive that you put into a chocolate dessert. And so if you only use a little bit, like the quarter of a teaspoon, you don't taste it in there. Definitely, it's not, you're not going to taste that, but it's just enough to make that chocolate that much richer. So I like to use it in this smoothie. I'll blend that up.
Well, this is certainly a tease. These are smoothies that taste that obviously must taste like dessert. And I'm sitting here at the end of the day thinking, I could really use some dessert. That looks really good. I wonder if you've ever have you ever made your own espresso powder, or just can you grind beans that fine, or is it not possible to get fine enough grind? I wonder.
If you have a coffee grinder, then if you use that for the espresso beans, then that would work. You just want to run it for a pretty good amount of time so that it just makes it really fine. If you have a really high power blender, then you could probably even put in some espresso beans, just a couple of beans in here. If you had those, and that would work as well, that would blend it up. But the espresso powder is, I just keep it in the fridge and lasts a long time and just use a little bit at a time.
I have a friend who has started roasting his own beans, and so I'm wondering. I've been playing lately. He gave me a sample of 4 different. He's doing all single origin stuff, and playing with different roasts, and it's really fun. I could see. It'd be really interesting to play because what I've learned is that like espresso powder, like espresso is a roasting method really, like a certain darkness, but there's so many different flavor profiles that could be really cool to play with, like, to put in there. Just you only need a couple beans. That could be really fun.
Right. Yeah. People have asked me in the classes about concerns about caffeine. They don't, if they don't want to have caffeine in the morning. When I put in a quarter of a teaspoon of espresso powder, that's only like a couple of beans worth. It's really not that much. So, of course, there is going to be a little bit of caffeine in that. So if that's really a major concern for you, then, you can just skip it. Like I said, you're not tasting it. It's just kind of enriching the chocolate flavor of it a little bit more. So this is, I would say, of the smoothie recipes in the cookbook, like I said, there's about 30. This is probably one that I make this one, the Black Forest smoothie, probably make this one at least once a week. Like I said, I like to have variety so I don't get bored. It's pretty hard to get bored with something that tastes like chocolate and cherries for breakfast. This one I really like, so this is definitely one of my regulars. So that is the Black Forest smoothie. So again, Healthy Vegan Cookbook, you can get that on Amazon. There's these 4 recipes are in the cookbook, as well as a whole bunch of other smoothie recipes. And let's see, you can also go to my website, which is colincooksvegan.com. So Colin is spelled Colin. Colincooksvegan.com. There's a Google Calendar there that shows where all of the different classes are that I'm teaching. Most of the classes that I teach are for libraries. So right now, we have the class next week, which is going to be the Healthy Sauces class. That one especially has been really popular during this time where everybody's at home, because these sauces are really meant to be sort of utility sauces that you can put over a number of different things. It doesn't have to be specific things that you're pouring the sauce over. So, if you are stuck at home and you're, digging into your pantry and you find like some weird can of beans that you don't know what to do with that, or you find, some kind of a grain that you bought a long time ago that, like farro or something, and people say, what the heck is that? Or like quinoa, what do I do with that? So a really good sauce is going to be able to go over those things so that, if it's a really good sauce, that's the thing that you're going to taste. And so, as we're kind of digging through our pantries and, finding all this stuff from like 2 years ago, as long as it's safe to eat still, and if you don't know what to do with it, a great sauce recipe is good for that. So we're going to do 4 different sauce recipes for that. And then the week after that, we're going to be doing healthy desserts. So it's kind of my spin on the not just vegan, but, using whole food ingredients as much as possible. So just like a note about that, when I submitted the cookbook to the publisher, then they said, where's the dessert section? And I said, I actually called that chapter healthy snacks, because, if you think about it, if you make a dessert that's really healthy, if you're using all whole food healthy ingredients, then why not be able to have that as a snack when you get home? It's, why not have it for breakfast even, if you have some of these things. So we're going to be making some of those recipes from the cookbook as well. So those are the 3 classes I'm doing here. And then, like I said, you can go onto my website with the Google Calendar, and it shows all the other classes that I'm doing as well. So that's my plug for that. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything before, as we're kind of wrapping this down here?
That's a great thing to ask folks, and I've been watching the chat streams, and I haven't seen any in the last few minutes. I've been asking as they came up, but I certainly encourage people if they have any now. I do see somebody says that somebody is looking at getting your cookbook, which is great. And I wanted to tell, I will definitely, when you send me the recipes from tonight, I assume we can get those up probably tomorrow on the library website, and I'll do a link to both your website, and I can do a link for your book to help people find it too. So excellent. I'm sure people can find it on their own. It's easy to find on Amazon. That's how we got our first copy, but here in my house. But it'd be great. Yeah, I'll be happy to share those. So
great, thank you. Well, one thing I say about the cookbook is, I love to cook. I've been, when I first became vegan 25 years ago, there wasn't really a lot of convenience foods, like frozen foods that you can get. So, and I definitely didn't have the budget to go out to eat that much. So I was making my own food, trying all these different recipes. And, so many of the cookbooks that I bought, the vegan cookbooks, they were really fancy. The recipes were, kind of trying to make like restaurant style recipes, and I was really looking for something that, it's like home style meals, vegan meals, and, something that's really quick and easy, like smoothies for breakfast, that's what I like to have. So, I really looked at, different cookbooks and really couldn't find anything really similar to how I like to have smoothies. So, there was that. And then for dinner, I usually have bowl meals. So, by that I mean, a meal in a bowl, usually, some kind of a base grain like, brown rice or quinoa, something like that. Put on some beans on top of that, or tofu or nuts or something. Put some sauteed veggies on top of that, some fresh veggies, all of which is super healthy, but, it's kind of boring to me. But a really good sauce really makes all the difference on that. So, that's usually what I have for dinner, is some kind of a bowl meal. And, I found some cookbooks that, had some sauce recipes in them, but, really nothing the way that I like to eat at home. I don't, I don't like to get so much into the complicated recipes. Like if I'm going to go to a potluck or something and I want to, show off and make something fancy, then that's great. But, at home, I don't want something that's going to be so involved and it's going to take me 3 hours to make it. So, that's kind of the angle where I made the cookbook from was, this is how I eat. This is what I do every day. This is what I make at home for myself and for my family. And they're not, the restaurant meals. I have made some of these recipes in restaurants before. I've been invited in, and that was a lot of fun to do that. But, usually I say I do home cooking. I don't really do restaurant cooking. So that's kind of how the cookbook is based on.
Thanks, Colin, for letting everybody know that about your history. There was a question, I think someone who joined us a little bit after you talked about it earlier, but this evening has really featured the Vitamix heavily, and it's something we know you lean on a lot. But I wonder if you could just talk for the folks who joined us a little bit late about options for other blenders, for other ways to mix it. I see that you have a food processor behind you too, so I don't know if we're going to be using the food processor in any of these recipes, but what are the other options if a Vitamix is not something that people are ready to invest for?
Right. Actually, last night I was making sauces in a class, and somebody asked me, can I use a food processor to make those sauces? And definitely no. You want to use a blender for that. Food processors don't really do very liquidy recipes very well. It just kind of comes out the sides. I have tried it before, so I know a blender is going to be the thing for things like smoothies and soups and sauces and things like that. So, like I was saying, a Vitamix is a really high power blender. It's pretty expensive to buy new, but you can get it used on Craigslist and eBay. This is the one appliance that I have in my kitchen that if it died today, then I would go out and buy another one tomorrow. I just use it all the time. So for me, it's it's the best investment that you can make for your health. In the way that I eat anyway, I use it all the time. So Vitamix is a high power blender. You can, for like a mid-level blender, you could get like a Ninja or a NutriBullet or something like that, and that'll work fine. It just Vitamix really blends it, so much that gives things a really creamy consistency, which a Ninja or a NutriBullet or something like that is going to have a bit of a harder time. If you're going to put in seeds like the flax seeds or like the chia seeds, you would probably want to take the extra step to mill those and grind those seeds, in a little spice grinder or a coffee grinder or something, because that's going to be kind of hard for a regular blender to be able to handle that. Also, we were talking earlier about soaking the nuts overnight so that it'll be softer. That would be something that you want to do if you don't have a Vitamix. Well, I would say try it and see if it works without having to do that. But that's an option. And then also the dates as well. That might be something, if you don't have a really good blender, you're probably going to want to soak those dates in some hot water for about 10 or 15 minutes. That really kind of loosens it up and makes it softer. So again, the blender is going to have an easier time with that, with the dates. But if you have the Vitamix, then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, and makes it super easy and convenient.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin.
Yep.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions tonight, so I think we may be at the end of a program, but I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have been totally, I was full. I had a nice dinner before this, but I could definitely find room for one of those smoothies, so I'm envious of you. You have now 4 quarts of smoothie to enjoy, so you should be set for a little bit there.
I do. Yeah.
So I can't wait for the time when we can gather again and I can enjoy some. So and when you can do a public demonstration, we can share them with everybody.